Hello, welcome back to the history of education. The subject from the foundation of education. So we continue with the history of education, and we have done the introduction and the concept. Now we are looking at the history of education with module of 5, and we are looking at lesson 2, which we are starting on ancient history and the history of education in the ancient Egypt, which starts from 3100 BC to 30 BC. This is your host, Dr. Tulipo Mwenifumbo. So, in the ancient Egyptian history, systems of primary reserved was of education was reserved to elite and focused on training for specific roles in society. So let us keep in mind that this system was from 3000 BC to 30 BC. This is we are talking about the history which spans from 5,000 years ago to 2,000 years to somewhere 2,000 years or 3,000 years ago. So in this history, the Egyptian were focusing on training the elite or the high class, and it was mostly on leading mathematics and also religious education. So let's look at the levels of education in the history of education in the ancient Egypt. So they had what they called the basic education. In this basic education, they were those children from the elite or wealthy families, which they were teaching uh, them leading and writing. So this was from the age of 5 years to 12 years. So children were taught how to read and how to write. They were also taught basic mathematics, calculations, and also they were taught religious and morals. So in this period, when the children of the rich people and the children of from the uh, from the leadership family, like the king's family or the pharaoh's family, they were taught these lessons leading. They were taught also basic mathematics and religious and moral teachings. So we can be able to lead through this, and we can be able to quote this from from the Bible, where the Bible says Moses was taught in all the wisdom and the teachings of the Egyptians. So there were schools that were meant for those people that were coming from well-to-do families. Then, from the age of 12 to 15 years, children were taught skills, which was called apprenticeship, and this was basically for boys. Boys learned a trade or a skill such as scribe training. When we talk about scribe training, that was record keeping and also duplicating the records and writing the events. So they were taught, and also there were those that were specialized to be priests training. They were taught religious rituals and ceremonies. So they were those that were just taught religious ceremonies and rituals. Then they had crafts, those that were specialized in carpentry, metalwork, pottery, and also constructions. So these were the education or the skills that were mostly there. Not forgetting the other field, which was military. So these were uh, the trainings that were done. The scribes, that is, the scribes were record keeping, the priests, then crafts, and also military. In the higher education, that is where we have also the ages from 15 above. They were taught advanced training. They continued learning about scribes. So the literature, poetry, and mathematics. So in this period, they were taught how to write poetry, writing the events, writing, doing mathematics, and also they were uh, priests. So they were taught theology, rituals, and astronomy, how to lead the events, how to understand what the prophecies, and how to be able to interpret things. So that's the interpretation of dreams. They were learning about God or gods. Then there were officials. Officials were taught law, governance, and diploma. So these were children from the well-to-do families, and children from the um, high class or leadership position, those that have held leadership positions. They were taught law, governance, and diplomas. Then, what were the education institutions? How were the institutions structured? So, they were called the houses of instruction. In these houses of instruction, mostly they were temples and places offered basic education. So, children used to go to learn from temples, and also there were other places like warfares that where children were taught. And there were also schools of scribes. The schools of scribes, they were those where they were keeping the records, and mostly they were held in the parishes. In the paris, that's where children were coming to learn how to keep records, and uh, how to learn poetry, and to do some official duties. Then there were priestly schools where these were taught how to become priests, and the rituals that were done by religious. They were taught the songs, and leading um, the priestly material and other things. What was the teaching method? The teaching method was done by memorizing text, spells, and rituals. You have seen like what happens in churches, like where you are memorizing the sacreds. You are memorizing like the scriptures. You are memorizing the Muslims. You are memorizing the prayers and all that. That was the kind of teachings that were done. So the children or the learners, the students, were taught to memorize texts, and they had to keep it by heart. Then there were apprenticeship, which was hands-on training. In this training, students were trained to do the work, like carpentry. There was nothing like being in class to learn carpentry. They were learning whilst they were seeing. They were learning their skills. If it is a construction, they will just go and learn from the people that are constructing, and they'll be helpers, and from there they will learn and become professionals and become masters in that skill. Then there were also mentorship. So this was done by experienced teachers who guided the students. So they'll teach the student on various skills according to what is called master classes. So the masters were teaching these students, and the students were identified by the masters. Let me drive you to the book of Acts, where the Bible says uh, they they looked at Peter and the other disciples, and they realized these people were not educated. But how come they are able to speak like this? And the Bible says, then they took notice that, oh, they were with Jesus Christ. There is this belief that Jesus Christ was not educated, but I want us to understand that Jesus Christ was a very educated person. That's why he was called master. He was called teacher. So that was what he attained. He was not called teacher because people recognize him as a said son of God, as a prophet. No, Jesus Christ was not recognized by that as a prophet. He was called teacher because he acquired the education. and only the people that were masters, who were mentors, were having disciples. So he had disciples under him. So these were called mentors. So the mentorship, children, people or students learn through mentorship. And now, how was their curriculum? So their curriculum was based on language, that was writing and literature, and also they learned mathematics, which was basically arithmetic, geometry, and accounting. So because this started in the Egyptian dynasty, because Egypt was the first civilized nation, which means that Africa was where civilization started from, and that is Africans were the superpower of the world. Then they were they learned religions, as we said, mythology, rituals, and moral teachings, and three practical skills, which were trades, crafts, and administrative tasks. So that is how their curriculum was. Access to education. Education was limited to the people that were elite. Education was primarily reserved for the wealthy and high-ranking officials. So those that were in leadership are the ones that acquired education with their children. Then education was also limited to boys. Education was mostly for boys, with some exceptions for girls from wealthy families, those girls that were taught how to present themselves before kings, and those that served in the palaces, and also done some work in some areas. So we are the only ones that were privileged to education. Slaves were not typically educated. Slaves were just learning through observation and through being told what to do. Thank you so much, and God bless you. This is your host, Dr. Tulipa Mwenfumbo, and this is what the Egyptian education was all about. Remember to like the video and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, and inquire also some other trainings that we are offering. Thank you so much, and God bless you.